welcome to the Cult Connections Review Show. I'm your host, Ian Graham, and every episode I will be joined by a guest to review what's new in the world of film and TV. So whatever takes my fancy, hopefully takes your fancy too. Come and join us on the Cult Connections Review Show. Hello everyone, and indeed welcome to the very first episode of the Cult Connections Review Show, hot off the press, etc, etc. And to launch the very first episode, I have my artist in residence. He is my cinema going partner, but most importantly, he's one of my best mates. It's Mr. Christopher Cassell. How are you, Chris?
I'm great, thank you. Again, a pleasure to be back. Like a bad penny, I don't go away. So, a real honor to be involved in your new venture as well.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you. Now we're actually going to cover something that I haven't actually seen a lot of their sort of press about. I haven't seen much in the way of their media coverage. I don't think any their podcast has actually done their review show on it yet. So this really will be quite the things we are talking about the very indie art house film The Batman, which just came out at the end of last week.
Oh, I haven't heard of this. Yeah, The Batman. I mean, the thing is, my question was, how are they gonna reinvent the character? But I mean, I needn't have worried because it's happened how many times with Spider-Man now? How many iterations? Are we on our third cinematic, generation of Spider-Men? So, it was fine. But I'll go more in depth later on as we chat further about the film itself.
So just to start out, Chris, now obviously we have our favourite the Doctor Who's, and we have our favourite the James the Bonds. But who's your Batman?
I was thinking about this earlier today, and it's a tricky one. It really is. I feel my gut instinct is Michael Keaton, but my first introduction to Batman, which I have huge fond memories, and I'll defend it to the hilt if anyone wants to take me on. But I have a huge love of the Adam West 60s TV series, which I was first introduced to. I remember distinctly before going to primary school, watching it in the morning. There must have been a run possibly on TVAM in the children's bit that they had weekdays early in the morning in the slot, and Batman was repeated. It was either TVAM or Channel 4, one of the two. I can't quite remember. And so that was my first introduction. And I remember being distinctly upset because I think it's the very first episode of the series, and Jill St. John is the guest star, and she falls into the atomic pile in the Batcave, and that was the end of her. And that was it. Wow, that's quite heavy going, But yeah. So yeah, just that memory so vivid. But yeah, I really loved the 60s show. But in terms of cinematic outings, I feel like my Batman is Michael Keaton, and of course, I was too young to see it at the cinema, so my first exposure to it, and I wanted to check this out, but I didn't have a chance today. It would have been the first time it premiered on Sky Movies. Now, at the time, people who had Sky, that was a big deal. I just had, my 4 channels on council telly as it was. But I remember going up to a person actually who lived next door to my primary school, and they had Sky because they had the dish, and I was quite friendly with them at school, and said, can you take Batman for me because it's premiering? And said, oh yeah, we can do that, but we're not sure what the weather will be like because it was very sensitive. So if it was a bit stormy, you just end up with a tape full of snow. Luckily, um, I managed to get a copy from them and watched it on my own. I think it was assumed, oh, it's Batman, it's a kids thing, it'll be fine. And I think I was a bit too young. There's some genuinely disturbing moments in that first film.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely get that. I know, very similar for me. The Batman TV series was on all the time when I was there growing up. Now, I'm very fortunate to have lived in the times where I used to go to my local cinema, which did a Saturday the matinee. My actual first cinematic Batman is the 1966.
Oh, brilliant.
They filmed
Amazing.
their version,
Yeah,
so I did
that's
get to
classic.
see that
Oh,
on. Yeah,
that is
absolutely
amazing.
brilliant.
That is. Oh, I'd love to see that on the big screen. I mean,
Yeah.
some days you can't get rid of a bomb.
um, However, I've also been fortunate, and I was working it out. I've seen every single Batman film at the cinema when it's come out.
That's
So
impressive. I mean,
yeah.
my memory of the '89 film is it was everywhere. It was that summer of '89. So you had Ghostbusters 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, all those big kind of Hollywood blockbusters, and Star Trek 5. Um, and the thing is that I think I found it frustrating because it was everywhere. That iconic chest emblem poster, that
Mhm,
symbol. And I remember Prince's music in the chart, the Bat Dance single, for seemingly ages. But yeah, there was just this frustration that I wasn't old enough to see it because I think it was classified as a 15 or at least a 12, and I would have been
mhm.
too young. Um, but I remember all the promo stuff. I seem to remember that despite it being aimed at an older audience, they still did do the kind of Saturday morning clips and promo stuff, because it was a big deal. And I think the scene a lot of the times they seem to show is the bit where the Joker is dining with Vicky Vale, and then Batman gate crashes through, and he says, "Oh, where'd you get these wonderful toys?" I remember that was seemed to be the kind of key moment in the promo clips that they would show. But yeah, I don't know whether I saw it in '89 or maybe it was '90 because it was on, VHS taped off of the Sky
Yeah.
Premiere channel. But yeah, I did find. Think two moments in that film disturbing would be the hand buzzer scene where the Joker ends up talking to the corpse,
Yeah.
and the creepy news broadcast which kind of culminates like there was two models that say love that Joker and it's all kind of staged, and then I think one of the newscasters dies as a result of the Smilex gas in the studio, and I found those two things like pretty disturbing, at the time.
Yeah, fair
But
enough. Yeah.
brilliant film though. I
Yeah.
still love it to this day. So yeah, I'd say Keaton, and as a Batman, he's not. I mean, I think he took like so many things where remakes and recastings are announced these days, and there's a very vocal voice on the internet. It was happening through letter writing campaigns and kind of bombarding studios with phone calls and that when they found out about Keaton's casting,
Mhm.
because he isn't your standard. You wouldn't necessarily think him as Batman. but he was brilliant.
He he was, and I think for me, if you talk about a Batman actor, he is the one who springs first to my mind. Certainly it's the Keaton. However, we
But
aren't
it's
really.
well, I was going to say, sorry, just before we move on, is he your favorite Batman, or is it Adam
Um,
West? Because you saw Adam West first.
I think. Oh, this is such a tough one now.
Hmm.
I think what makes it harder as well is just in this past week I watched a 1960s film which I would describe as being like Batman on acid. Um, and that is actually Mario Bava's The Danger, the Diabolic, which is based on their Italian cartoon.
Okay.
Um, and it's very weird, but it's very fun and it looks fantastic. And the main character is he is a anti-hero. Um, but when I was watching it last week and then the run up there to seeing this film, and I was very much like, oh, that whole '60s feels it's just fantastic. It's just absolutely brilliant. But if we could have a slightly darker version, maybe a slightly edgier version of sort of Adam West, maybe not his character, but the tone of the show overall,
Yeah, yeah, very much
then
more kind of pulpy, comic booky, um,
yeah,
in a very loose sense, in an almost cartoony sense. Would you say?
yeah, yeah, maybe not quite so sort of camp, but still very sort of colourful
Hmm. Yeah,
and fun, I would
mm,
say.
yeah,
Um,
fun.
yeah. So on that note, this new film absolutely channels all those things that we've just been there talking about. Because it's super duper fun and light and family friendly. So
It's. I mean, if you loved Adam West, come and see the Batman. You won't be disappointed.
um, you know what? You won't actually be the disappointed because in the lead up to this film there, Chris, and I remember I watched the trailer and I enjoyed the trailer. I enjoyed it because Batman was basically punching seven bells out of someone in a
Yes.
very violent way, and I was like, yes, okay, I can get that, but I was a bit like, whoa, another dark, serious their sort of tale, and there for me leading up to a lot of the DC films recently have been poor faced and
Been
actually a bit boring.
quite worthy, haven't they? I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, there's not a lot of kind of lightness, and I think some people would argue the toss whether or not he's a superhero, because he is a rich man, and rather than having any powers and things, but Batman is my favorite, you know. So and I was kind of thinking, like I said earlier on the intro to this, I was thinking, well, how are you going to reinvent it again? And
Mhm.
but studios find a way of doing these things. I mean, it happens with Bond all the time. I don't know how that's going to turn out, and that's another podcast of subject really. But they will. They'll find a way to reinvent it, and they have with the Batman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funnily enough there was the tweet just this morning, and it was about one of the executives, I think, at the Warner Brothers or sort of DC itself, saying, um, "We realise now that what we have to do is let the film maker just tell their vision and actually trust the film their makers that we hire there to tell a good their story." So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I was excited. I think when I saw the trailer, I thought I was a bit like you. I was like, oh, it's going to be another kind of dark, grim take, and I loved the Joker and thought it was a brilliant film. But it's also at the same time, it's not one of those ones where I go, all right, I want to, who fancies a bit of this? Because the subject matter is quite dark. And I did feel if it was going to, the Batman was going to go down that route in its entirety, I'd be like, oh, this is depressing. And especially in these times where you want to be a bit more uplifted with things. I was slightly wary going into the cinema, but I tell you, I was not disappointed.
No, me neither. So we do have The Batman, and they're directed by Matt Reeves, who we know actually best from the Planet of the Apes films.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cloverfield, which I actually think is very under their rated film, which is
Yeah.
a very decent film. Written by the Reeves and Peter the Craig, who Hollywood doesn't actually do this. So Hollywood is not a place for the nepotism whatsoever. And
No,
of
no.
course, Peter Craig is not Sally Field's son at all. No, he's not.
Ah, the, the son of the flying nun.
so, and obviously, and based on the comic book, um, their writers and so on. Now, you did the notice in the credits, Chris, about a different name who actually popped up for it for
Oh,
their creation.
oh yes, yeah. Because you mean the creation of Batman himself?
Yeah, haha.
Yeah. So I mean, for years it's always been kind of accredited to Bob Kane as, but now in more recent years, also Bill Finger is getting credited for the co-creation of Batman.
Mhm.
That's correct, is it? Yeah. So, which because I think the idea is that the Bob Kane came up with the concept, but Bill Finger came up with the development and created the world that he lives in. So like various characters and plot devices and things that have now become synonymous with the character himself. And quite rightly, he deserves credit for it as well.
Yeah. And I think, in the words of Vic and their Bob, we really want to see those fingers.
Yeah, sweet.
So a star-studded cast. Obviously, Robert, the Pattinson as the Batman, Zoe Kravitz, the Jeffrey, the Wright, who we obviously love from
From
the
Bond.
Bond
Yeah.
films. Yeah, Paul Dano, the Colin Farrell. If you can, they recognise him.
I know,
So.
it's staggering, isn't it? It's like, I mean, some people are saying, "Oh, you could have cast anyone as the Penguin," but yeah, yeah, that is mind-boggling. I still like looking at him. I was like, yeah, I can't see it at all, to be
No,
honest.
not at all. So yeah, a big the cast, and there are lots of others in there as well. But I mean, the big question is, Pat?
Yes.
Because there was a lot of guff basically,
Hmm.
prior to this film about, oh, why would you cast him, and oh, you'll never be my
You know,
Batman, and
it's always the same. And like I was saying about Keaton, and I remember when Ben Affleck was cast, and I was like, he could do a good job. He could carry it off, and all these again internet keyboard warriors kind of saying, how can you cast him? Giving loads of excuses, and then of course they see the performer in action, and then hopefully eat their words. And in
Mhm.
this case, I thought Patterson was brilliant.
Yeah, I thought he was absolutely great. I think. I think as well, like Chris, lots of people, prior to it, brought up the Twilight, which is like, 15 years ago or whatever it is,
Mm.
and never mind the fact that Pattinson's got a huge body of work since then,
Yes, yeah,
which is. Yeah, and there's some absolutely great films in there. I've heard a lot of buzz about his um, uh, their performance in their good their times, which I have seen, and it is a really good film. Um, on the main show, actually, not that long ago, I did cover their Lighthouse,
yes, yeah.
and he's absolutely amazing in that film. It's just that is a standout. And if anyone thinks, well, he hasn't got acting their sort of chops, then go and watch that, because it's absolutely superb. You can thank Mr. Mark their plant for that one, because that was his idea. But
Oh,
I
nice.
think he's absolutely great.
Can I put my hand up as well at this moment and say I haven't seen a Twilight film? I think actually the only other thing I've seen him in is in Harry Potter. So so I haven't had a lot of exposure to him as an actor. I would like to see The Lighthouse though. But
Oh, it's on their Netflix here, Chris, and it's well worth a watch. And there's an excellent podcast episode that also covers the
oh,
like.
indeed, it sounds like it. So, but I mean, his I mean, okay. Well, I mean, perhaps we should say this for people potentially listening. This will have spoilers, and if you haven't seen the Batman and are concerned, um, you know, don't listen from here on. Um, but yeah. So he it's a very different approach. Um, I believe that Matt Reeves actually he envisaged the Bruce Wayne Batman character to be more like as if it was Kurt Cobain, hence the
Mhm.
hair as well. And I
Yeah.
can get that, and obviously with the music cues that we'll go into later, but it's very much a kind of a different persona. We don't get to see too much of Bruce Wayne. It definitely is more a Batman film.
Hmm.
And there's none of the usual tropes where he's in his nice mansion and he's kind of partying and things like that. Here is a a kind of quiet, reclusive man who lives in this kind of a run down Wayne Manor. Really, it's kind of
Hmm.
falling apart a bit at the seams. They're kind of clinging on to hold it together, and very much more grounded than
Yeah.
previous kind of entries,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Uh-huh. Very, very sort of, yeah. You touched on, this isn't, the playboy or the socialite. He doesn't seem to have much media, their sort of presence. It's almost like, nobody really knows who sort of Bruce Wayne is, uh, very much at all, because he doesn't advertise that at all. He doesn't, he doesn't go anywhere or do anything except, sit in his bat cave and be sort of miserable there by the looks
Well,
of things. So,
indeed, and the story. I mean, we're kind of year two of adventures. He's been doing it. He's had a full year on the job. He's established. The Batman is known by the police, and I think, some of the general public, don't they? There is a press
yeah,
awareness
yeah.
that he's around. Um, Whereas, yeah, like you say, Bruce Wayne isn't seen. There was some press coverage, obviously, when his parents were killed. But other than that, he's just kind of been pottering away in the background, which
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
a good different take on
Hmm.
the character. You
Yeah.
know, and also what struck me as well, um, in contrast to more recent performances, he's not putting on a shouty voice when he's the Batman. This everything seems to be going back to its roots. he's a detective, and that's how it all started. He
Hmm.
was a detective, not kind of a direct crime fighter into brawling and things all the time. There was, kind of method and finding out who committed crimes and things. So it's very much going back to the roots of the character that appeared in Detective Comics all those years ago.
Exactly, spot on there, Chris, and that actually leads us nicely on to one of the buzz sort of phrases that I've heard a lot about the film, and it does, I've heard a lot of people say about it being um, the the noir, and the sort of detective stories are very much part of their sort of genre. There's a lot of film, the noir, their stories which are about sort of detective sort of figures, or in assurance, they're sort of investigators and that sort of role that you have. Very
Mm-hmm.
very dark and quite sort of seedy stories. Now, to be fair, what I would say is that this film is not the noir film as such. I didn't hugely get that feel. But what it is probably the grounded their Batman there that we've ever had.
I think I got a wee bit of the noir, apart from the lovely way it was shot and the fact that a lot of the scenes take place at night and things. He does have an internal monologue, doesn't he? Like a kind of
Hmm.
detective working things out. So every now and again, you can hear his thoughts, which is a nice touch.
Hmm. Um,
Uh,
but yeah, it did feel. I'm not. I'm not saying it felt hugely real world, but um, it did seem fairly sort of realistic. There wasn't a lot of gadgets. There wasn't a lot of really sort of daft sort of stuff. Like the villains themselves weren't. They weren't sort of superhero-y. They were. These were things that you could reasonably sort of do
in
in
current
the our
times. Yeah,
world.
yeah. That
Yeah.
that that device where um I still haven't what I still can't remember the name of it, but where he jumps off the building and he's a bit
Hmm.
apprehensive of doing it. I don't
Yeah.
blame him, to be honest, and does that kind of gliding basically. And you
Yeah.
can see people doing that on YouTube now with GoPros. It's not nothing was you know, really kind of pushing it technology
No.
wise, possibly apart from the contact lenses, which who knows
Mm.
may exist. You
Yeah.
know,
Um, the Batmobile, which I loved, I could see some some sort of car nerds actually building something very similar,
I'd be
and you
surprised if it
know,
hasn't already been done.
and it also gave it gave me a little nod back to the 1960s Batman when the engine they powered up, and I did think turbines there to speak.
Oh
Um,
yes.
it did it did give me that. I did absolutely love that part of it. I don't really want to talk about the plot too much if you haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. You are sorry. I thought we were
Well,
going all out for it.
I don't mind. I don't think we need to go into the meat and bones of it to sort of really churn it over. Um, Again, like a lot of Batman films, there are sort of a few sort of villains going on. So,
Yeah,
um,
it seemed to be a habit from the Burton era onwards to start doubling up. I'm not sure why. I mean, I don't particularly think there's necessarily a need to do that. In fact, in a way, I mean, I suppose these comic book universes are so broad anyway, and there's so many kind of different characters and villains that you've always got a pool to take from. But yeah, it seemed from the onset of 1992's Batman Returns onwards that you'd use multiple characters rather than just
mhm.
having one. So
Yeah.
You had Jack Nicholson in the first, but then it was Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito as Catwoman and the Penguin. And coming all these years later, we have another iteration of Catwoman and the Penguin,
Yeah.
joined by the main villain, the Riddler.
Yeah.
As you said, all different interpretations to what we've seen or what we've been familiar with in the past as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, yeah. The Penguin was fairly much a sort of gangster type, a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
their sort of boss. The sort of Catwoman again, quite sort of mixed in her sort of motives.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And not none of the characters, um, aside from the Batman himself, have a particular costume, would you say? Really, it does look
Yeah.
like stuff's been thrown together. I mean, even Catwoman's outfit, it's not, you could fling that together from bits and pieces. It's not what you'd kind of class as a costume, you
No,
know
no,
and there was
no.
certainly no um, green spandex, with question marks on it for the Riddler. Nothing like that. What
No,
one piece
no.
onesies.
Uh, he did have a quite effective sort of looking mask type thing though, which
Oh,
um,
you mean the Riddler?
yeah, uh-huh.
Yes, yes, and something that, from what I believe you can see in the film, uh, real world stuff. There's a bit where he's broadcasting on the screen, and people are asking questions, and you can actually read what the answers are. Like, oh, I think it's a ski mask with gaffer
Yeah,
tape on it,
uh-huh.
or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
It's like you say, because it's grounded. A lot, and these characters are dealing with off the shelf bits and pieces. Now,
yeah,
of
uh-huh.
course, coming to the man himself, what did you think of his appearance? The new Batman outfit with the
Um,
cowl.
the cowl, what that bit?
No,
No.
no, the cowls is
Oh,
massive. The actual
I,
head bit.
it's, I don't have a huge opinion on it. He looks like
Yeah,
Batman.
he looks like That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think I like the chest emblem. They don't go into that much, but it definitely looks
No.
like it's been made from gun parts of some
Hmm.
sort. I think that
Yeah.
was the basis that it harks back to, could be potentially the pistol that was used in his parents' killing. The jury's still out on that, but no, I thought it was a good different stylistic approach, and not bulked up like Ben Affleck
Yeah.
was either.
Aye.
A more streamlined Batman.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But and a good shape in certain scenes, because the film was shot at night. And it's quite a striking silhouette that he casts. So that
Yeah.
worked very effectively. Um, well, one of the things that struck me about watching the film was how, I don't know. I feel like, because um, he was acting as a kind of consultant detective, and you saw him with other police officers who obviously didn't approve of him being there.
Yeah.
It was an interesting approach, because again, it's not, normally he's a solo crime fighter in the dark, and he doesn't normally want to be in close proximity of others. Whereas this time you're seeing him with groups of people, like the policeman he was working with and stuff. And lit, I thought that'd be a massive build up before he actually makes his appearance, but he just kind of rocks up, doesn't he? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. It's not. I know. I know. I must. It's nice not to have that sort of grandioseness of so many other superhero films. It's
Yeah,
the big build up. He was just
yeah.
there.
He was just
Yeah.
there, and also not having the tropes that we've seen before of, like, the flashbacks to his parents getting shot and
Oh
all
yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It didn't need to kind of go over stuff, and it made it quite fresh. And it was like, here's the character. We're on this now. Let's
Mhm.
go. It was great. There was,
Yeah,
like you say, no huge kind of build up or anything like that, which
yeah,
was again, refreshing. It
yeah,
reinvents it.
yeah, just going for it. Now, as we know, Chris, we are both the uber nerds. So one thing that we do is to scrutinise the cast of any film, and we always feel warmth when there's some smaller parts that we sort of recognise. Now you got this first one, and I didn't actually realise, and it was only afterwards when you said, I was like, oh yeah. So
Yeah.
who stood out for you then, Chris?
Well, I mean, obviously, you've got your main cast members who are all brilliant, like Paul Dano and Zoe Kravitz, and of course, the Penguin, who I have no idea who was playing him because it was so much prosthesis. But in all seriousness, no, it's nice when you see recognizable faces appear or voices, and it was by voice first. And in Wayne Manor, it was a lady appears on screen, and I was like, I recognize that voice. And it was Sandra Dickinson, who originally played Trillian in the television version of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, of which you know a fair bit about, and we have
I
a
do, yeah.
mutual friend who knows a huge amount about all that stuff because he was involved with the production
Yeah.
and is indeed friends with Sandra as well. So, yeah, that was great to see her pop up. I mean, she's made appearances in various kind of dramas and films and things. Now, I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember the breakfast based thing that this involves, but I think she's in Superman 3 because when Gus Gorman um, rigs all the computers and
Uh-huh.
things go a bit crazy, it cuts to
Yeah.
various kind of households and stuff. And I think
Oh
the
yeah.
implication is
Uh-huh.
that the husband has got this bill through the post,
Yeah.
and she's sitting there having bread. Is it a grapefruit? I
I
thought it
think
was
it's
a
a
grapefruit
grapefruit. I think
in
it's a
the face.
grapefruit, yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, that'd sting your eyes if it got in there, like shoves a grapefruit in her face rather, So I don't know whether or not that was her last appearance in a superhero based film, but it was lovely to see her in the
Yes,
Batman.
well, oh, now I've just looked her up on IMDb now. Yeah, she's in the Batman. Um,
She was in Thunderbirds as a voice.
Thunderbirds Are Go, yes.
Yeah.
No, but you're right, Superman 3, but after that, she's in Supergirl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
I haven't seen that film for a long time.
me
Um,
neither.
no,
Oh, right.
yeah. Funnily enough, now I love a soap opera reference. So um,
Okay.
anyone who's actually listened to any of my the Boba Fett episodes will they know that I love a stupid soap opera reference. Now this isn't a stupid one because the actor that I'm thinking of. So that is Alex Ferns. Now in the Batman, he plays um, Commissioner Pete Savage. He's best known to the British viewers for being on EastEnders. He played the evil, nasty, vile, the Trevor who they beats up their little their Mo on a regular basis. He eventually got his their just rewards on that show, but it was nice to see him. Um,
I'm
yep,
just
that's
holding a
him.
picture up now. I said before we started this that I wasn't sure who that was because I didn't watch EastEnders,
Yeah.
but I recognise the
Uh
actor,
huh.
so I must have been culturally aware of him. and everything you're saying rings bells now. And I
Yeah.
did not equate that actor with the person I saw on screen.
Yeah. Haha. Yeah.
Again, I suppose anyone, if you grow a beard, you know, your appearance changes, and obviously it's been a few years since. No,
Yeah.
wow, I had no idea. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, to Trevor, who thankfully got his just rewards in the end. One thing that really struck me by the film there, Chris, was actually the music, which I thought was they're really good. Now, obviously, there is the use of a few their songs in that. I know that you did enjoy that aspect of it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you know, you've got like I mentioned before, Matt Reeves has gone on record to say that, you know, he envisaged Batman stroke Bruce Wayne as Kurt Cobain, and then throughout the film you've got something in the way, the Nirvana track, which kind of permeates it in different forms.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes to kind of represent the Batman's like just going to turn up in shot. You hear that very kind of low bass line, you know, and the footsteps as well to
Mm-hmm.
kind of introduce you to his appearance. And yeah, very different from, you think of the Elfman tracks for Batman '89. This bombastic kind of theme almost. There wasn't, as with many things these days, there wasn't much trace of that, except there was a running theme, you know. And I don't think I was trying to think back, um, and 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 this, you know, this track works well with this film. Um, One that didn't, back from 1997's Batman and Robin, and I remember hearing the track, and it was by the Smashing Pumpkins. I think
Mm-hmm.
is the end is the beginning is the end. Um, and I thought, oh, that sounds like that'd be a great song for a kind of dark Batman film. And of course, you know
That
what
we
we
didn't
ended
get
up with.
a dark Batman film.
No, and I think actually that Smashing Pumpkins track was again reused, possibly, I could be wrong, but possibly for the Watchmen TV series,
All right.
or
Uh-huh.
or yeah, like I said, don't quote me on that, but it was used to greater effect for probably how it was intended, basically, you know, and this worked really well. This is like, I mean, we've got grunge Batman now, haven't we? Really,
Yeah.
um, and
Or emo Batman or someone.
emo Batman, and of course, I mean, you had some classical music in there. There's a running thread of Ave Maria,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm trying to remember. Was it Michael
Yeah,
who
Michael
composed?
Giacchino.
Okay, okay, a
Uh-huh.
stalwart then of the film and
He is
TV
indeed.
soundtrack.
Actually, he's got some lovely, quite very subtle, actually, sort of pieces he's made for it with these lovely, deep, their piano notes. Sort of very slow, quite sort of ominous. They're sort of brooding. I did actually read somewhere, and this was my very thoughts as well when I was sitting watching the film. Almost like a very slowed down version of the Imperial March from their Star Wars. I don't know if you actually picked it up there, Chris.
Oh, okay. Is that how? Yeah, how it came across.
Yeah.
I thought the soundtrack worked incredibly well in kind of building tension, and especially when it's, you know, a detective drama almost, and you're watching things unfold, and the pace of the music ramps up. I mean, there's, you know, I know you said we're not going too much into plot points, but there's one big set piece regarding a departure of one of the characters, and yeah, very dramatic and a great use of music to kind of ramp up that
Hmm.
tension. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
great stuff.
I do want to talk. I just to sort of round up for me, Chris, anyway. But and just my thoughts. And one thing that struck me, um, also about how these films are going to move there forward. I mean, I think there's sort of talk about another, two of them, which I would absolutely love. But near the end of the film, we see the iconic Arkham Asylum.
Yes.
And that's a place within they're sort of Gotham, and they speak about the two sort of families, they're the Waynes and the Arkhams, and obviously the Arkhams built this hospital, which is more like their jail. But what I was thinking, Chris, and this got me to my work. So, and I don't really talk much about work on the show, but you might know I am a mental health their nurse. And obviously in my working life, I'm very, very sort of passionate about that.
Yes.
You know what? The Gotham wouldn't need the Batman, and the police would actually have time to track down proper, real their sort of criminals, and not deal with these poor souls who become, tortured.
Super
They're
criminals,
villains,
essentially. Yeah,
super villains. If they had a better funded mental health service, so
exactly.
you don't need Arkham, the asylum. You need better outreach and you know the care at home and their sort of community mental health, their teams. And I'm pretty sure most of this would not have actually happened.
Indeed. You see, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, not all heroes wear capes. There we go. Words
No.
from Mr. Ian Gray. No, it's very true. And you're right. That's the thing. And I don't know. Is that more blame on Thomas Wayne for not structuring things properly in his town? Oh, he was
Maybe.
running for mayor. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, a failure. I think. Yeah, it's a bit like the old Detroit of RoboCop, isn't it? Gotham has
Yeah.
its equivalent of Delta City. The rich all live in the towers, and then on ground level, it's atrocious, and
Uh-huh.
things are falling apart.
Yeah.
I actually talking about the cityscape. I mean, in the press when it was being filmed here, because lots of bits and pieces were done in Glasgow. Um, I felt like I was watching it and you couldn't really tell. I wasn't sometimes films there's things that are filmed and it's very familiar to me, it
Hmm.
being here in Scotland. I wasn't getting that, and I also thought Gotham looked like a very different city
Hmm.
compared to anything else we've seen, and
Yeah.
had its own kind of identity as well, which I thought was quite nice.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I did like the sort of Piccadilly Circus, or the Times sort of
Yeah, on
Square.
the corner, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought that was very good because
Yeah.
it's for once having a central piece, a centerpiece of the city that doesn't really compare to anything else. I think on previous films, I mean, if you go back to Batman '89, Gotham City's tiny. It's got like the City Hall bit,
Yeah.
cinema, and the alley where Bruce's parents get shot, and a few rooftops. But it's not very big because it
No.
was all filmed on the Pinewood lot. Whereas this felt quite sprawling. And in contrast, I mean, I suppose we can't let it go by without comparison to the Nolan trilogy.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
that was, I felt like it's been a while since I've watched them all, but that was very much a location pre-existing city. There was nothing particularly unique about it that would make it
Yeah.
specifically Gotham.
Uh-huh.
Whereas
Yeah.
I felt there was a bit more to it on this
Uh,
occasion.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Definitely. Um, it's a very long film. It's just under 3 hours. For me, Chris, it passed actually fairly quickly. Were you much the
As
same?
Passed as the water did through you, Ian, because I know you couldn't quite make it to the end of the film. Actually, no, we do. Where I don't, we have a habit of normally watching the end credits
Yeah,
together, and unfortunately, on this occasion, the call of nature was far too strong for you, which I don't
yeah,
blame. I think it could have maybe been trimmed a wee bit,
a
although
wee bit.
a wee bit. But then I don't know. Some of the charm of it, the lingering scenes, a bit, the pacing of it all seemed to work.
Yeah.
I think it's just our old man bladders can't keep up with the pace these days.
No, definitely. On that note, however, Chris, I am going to wind things up because I don't want my the podcast episode to be as long as the film itself. Not in this case.
Quite right too.
But it was. I tell you what, I wasn't not looking forward to it, but when you said, "Oh, will we go?" I was like, "Oh yeah, let's go," but wasn't like super excited.
Mm.
However, having seen it, I am so glad that we did see it because it was really really good. Um,
I really enjoyed it. I think I definitely wanted to see it, and I was quite excited about seeing it. I was just concerned about how how dark it might actually be, and hearing initial reports and things. And it's like there's moments in in the film, scenes that I actually thought were quite uplifting, and contexts where you haven't necessarily really seen Batman in that situation before. I mean, a literal beacon of hope at one point, holding up a flare,
yeah.
and I thought that was a very powerful imagery. And I came out of the film thinking that was really good, and I'm not really depressed, which
Yeah.
wasn't the case when watching The Joker, which was still a brilliant, cinematic experience, but it's just not one that I'd necessarily want to
No.
revisit. I'd have to be in the mood for it. Whereas again, you know, um, they've proved that Batman can be reinvented, and long live the Pat Bat.
Indeed, long live Patsman. I think to say. No, it was really good. And on that note, Chris, I will say thank you very much for being the very first guest on the Cult Connections review show. So thank you.
No, it's a huge pleasure, and I hope I will make a return appearance at some point. You can't get rid
We
of me
know
that easily.
Well, we know fine that you will because let's face it, you're the person who I go to the cinema with. So,
That's true.
um,
Very true.
so you will be back. And on that note, thank you everybody for tuning in. Um, I will be back soon, covering another superhero who might go by the name of Moon Knight. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much. See you
what you
soon.
what are you going to cover him in?
The tinfoil, I thought was.
Oh, that's a good one.
Thank you.